I'm Michelle Miller from CBS Saturday Morning. Welcome to The Dish. The benefits of healthy eating are bountiful. The downside, we often assume, though, is sacrificing flavor, but not in this episode. Today, we're exploring chefs' healthy and delectable dishes, from beet hummus in Los Angeles to Mapo, tofu in Brooklyn. We begin right here in Manhattan, where a James Beard award-winning chef is focused on bringing nutritious food to his neighborhood.
Without Harlem, I wouldn't be Chef JJ.
To Chef J.J. Johnson, feeding this community is the pinnacle of his culinary career, even as a fast, casual takeout king.
How important was it to open Field Trip here?
My goal was to show people that Black and brown communities want health-conscious food or better conscious eating. And why not it be in the heart, between 115th and 116th Malcolm X Boulevard? That's the heart of Harlem. Let's show the world that, and let the people show the world that. That was very important to me.
That's the idea behind Field Trip and its menu, an invitation to connect communities through a single source.
Let's talk rice, because rice is such a fixture now. It's the base of Field Trip.
Our slogan is Rice is Culture, and you'll see that reflected in our dishes at Field Trip. All the bowls you eat are influenced by the rice grain. So this is Southeast Asia. This is our veggie bowl that has coconut yogurt, broccoli, jollof. Rice is a mixture of India and West Africa. You have seafood gumbo, our hot honey plantains, shrimp bowl with some coconut sticky rice, green curry, our famous crab pockets that people will fight you for if we run out, our dragon fruit lemonade, some Rice Krispie treats, sake. I brought it all for you.
But Field Trip opened just 8 months before the pandemic shut down New York City. And with it, Johnson thought his dream.
I was always worried. You know me, I'm a fighter. I'm just gonna always go. There's not many things that can really stop me in my tracks. I'm gonna figure out a way around it.
He figured it out when he realized his community needed something more than just home delivery.
The first call came in, and it was an elderly woman. And I delivered that order to that lady, and I'm by the elevator, she shouted, Sir, can you come back? I need help. And I thought about my grandmother, and she was just basically no, can you help me move my oxygen tank? That's where it started. Then it was can you feed my cat?
So you were almost full-time caregiver there.
And then I said, well, where's your caregiver? And she said, well, no caregivers could come to our house because of COVID.
It was that and a conversation with his wife that pushed him to the next level.
My wife came home as a nurse, 1:30 in the morning, saying I didn't eat any food. And I said, well, how can you go the whole day without eating? There was no time to even think about it. And that moment was okay, I need to do something. And of course, I sent food to her hospital. That was my first realization of okay, now I know who Field Trip is. Now I know our purpose. And we have our marching orders, and let's keep marching.
Born on Long Island, Johnson was raised in the Pennsylvania Poconos and spent a lot of his early childhood prepping food in the kitchen.
My mom would drop us off to my grandparents' house in the morning. She would go to work. My dad would be long gone. And when I grew up, I thought they were my great aunts, but they were my great great aunts that were Puerto Rican, and they were my grandma's sous chefs.
Wow.
So from the beginning of the morning, they'd be cooking. Lunchtime, they'd be making their own stocks. So I would be peeling carrots or onions or celery or washing rice in the sink for them, standing on a milk crate or a step stool.
He was hooked and later went on to graduate from the prestigious Culinary Institute of America, soon after earning a position in the kitchen at New York's famed Tribeca Grill.
Where was I gonna live? I couldn't afford rent. So I had to call my Aunt Jeannie and my Aunt Estelle. They lived together. First day she sat down with me in her apartment. She said, I'm gonna tell you one thing. New York will make you or break you. You figure it out.
His big break came when he was tapped by chef and entrepreneur Alexander Smalls as executive chef of the Cecil and Minton's, Harlem's historic jazz club. After 6 years in fine dining, he opted out.
So I was okay, I need to take a risk. I don't know if it was the right time. My wife was pregnant, we're about to have twins, right? So there's never the right time when you want to be an entrepreneur and spread your wings.
Johnson is continuing to spread his wings.
You do realize that you're doing what So many other restaurants are not.
All I can say is praise the Lord.
Is that sunk in? That you're doing what some people say is the impossible?
It sinks in at times, and other times I'm just going.
Yeah, constant motion.
Constant motion. And I think the times that bring you to happiness is when your 95-year-old grandfather says to you, "You're doing good, kid," right? Those are the moments where you take a step back and go, okay, this is great.
Coming up, we head to the Golden State to meet a chef creating comfort food without the calories. This is The Dish. Eating clean and cooking clean is Chef Fernando Darin's mantra. As our Dana Jacobson found out, the menu at his restaurant, Mother Tongue, in Los Angeles, mirrors that.
It doesn't feel like a traditional restaurant.
Nourishing the mind and the body. That's the intent of Mother Tongue.
The patio here is probably my favorite.
Executive Chef Fernando Darin says it's a concept built into the restaurant, which occupies the top floor of the social and fitness club High Mat, a name that means the feeling of home.
The name of the restaurant, Mother Tongue, was a very easy reflection of what High Mat is. We wanted to take all these dishes from around the world and transforming it into our own mother tongue.
Simply put, it's comfort food from around the world, but all made using nutritional ingredients without sacrificing taste. A challenge Chef Fernando, as he's known at Mother Tongue, embraced.
I took this project because of the challenge and because this reflects my lifestyle as well. I like to eat clean. I like to cook clean. And the food that it's on that menu is a reflection of that.
Take Mother Tongue's version of a traditional bread service. Pita alongside 3 colorful and flavorful dips.
You can mix the colors and you can make a painting if you like.
There's a Syrian-based walnut mahamara.
I love this one.
A beet hummus. And an avocado and tarragon mousse with the antioxidant spirulina on top.
They all have like very distinct flavors, but like they get your mouth going.
Along with health, there's also a focus on sustainability, like in the Mother Tongue lamb.
We use a not so popular cut, the neck, which is very flavorful and a very sustainable thing.
Cured for 2 days, roasted for 5 to 6 hours, then shredded before being served in a papillote.
It feels good to be using the cuts. Not everyone thinks about using it.
That lamb is like melt in your mouth.
Each offering also maintains a focus on comfort and multi-ethnicity. The Brazilian mojeca, a seafood stew served with rice, toasted yuca flour, herbs, and onions. Feijoa, a cousin of paella, made with lobster, shrimp, and roasted citrus, all on top of a thin noodle instead of rice.
The noodles get crispy on top, so there's a lot of texture going on.
The cultural fusion, reflective of Chef Fernando, who grew up in Brazil with an Italian heritage.
The Italian food that I know is not the Italian food that is in Italy.
Right.
It's an adaptation with Brazilian ingredients. And this is what I love, not to get too attached to the recipe, the right ingredient itself. Open your mind, and that's when true creativity can flow.
Since he was a kid, Chef Fernando has had his hands in the kitchen, learning the cooking basics from his grandmother.
She would make me help out, and she would make me stir the polenta, which I hated it because it was just like 4 hours stirring that polenta. It started all very, very young.
But you didn't think this is going to be my future in cooking when you were younger?
No.
Yeah. When did that change for you?
I think it changed when I moved to Los Angeles. I came here just to stay for a few months, honestly, and I knew this guy that introduced me to this great chef called Eric Greenspan. 2 years later, I was his sous chef. One door started to open and another door, and then I'm like, 15 years later, I'm still here.
While he may call it an unintended career, it's combined perfectly with the one he thought he'd have as a musician, playing guitar.
There are so many chefs that we talk to that music is their other passion. Is there something there?
It's very connected. I feel there's a very similar thing about conducting an orchestra and conducting a kitchen. Are you ready? Steam? The way that people work together, it's very similar.
I'm even thinking in a recipe, it's like I need a little more violin or I need a little more spice.
I use that a lot,
Yeah.
that analogy. I say this needs a little EQing, like a little bit more bass or a little bit more mids. Fats and oils are like the base, and highs, vinegars and lemon.
The right combination, harmony. Something Mother Tongue strives for in each item on the menu.
Oh my gosh.
Its ever-popular risotto, a perfect example. Orzo, corum puree, and stracciatella cheese with black truffle shaved on top.
It's a very simple dish, but I honestly think that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Another Mother Tongue mantra, played out in dessert.
This is wonderful.
Which for us was an Indian-inspired carrot cake pudding with cardamom cream and pistachios.
I'm going to go back to the menu because we started talking about the challenge of creating it. But how much fun did you have in creating the menu?
It's probably the most fun part of opening a restaurant. I like to go and I like to watch the table. Can be sounds a little creepy. Sounds a little creepy, but I don't do that often. But I like to see, people's reactions, and probably the most interesting reaction that I ever got in my cooking career.
Really?
Because I feel like here I was able to translate my personality to its fullest to the menu. And people acknowledge when something is true, something's not fake. The menu here is truthful to what I am.
After the break, we meet a chef turned 4-time best-selling author. You're watching The Dish. From humble Asian and Australian roots grew a force of nature in both the culinary and publishing worlds. Hedy McKinnon met up with me at a farmer's market to show how fresh produce is key to her cooking.
So, what I love is really focusing on everyday vegetables.
Walk through Hedy McKinnon's local farmer's market.
What are we looking for?
We're looking for broccoli.
Okay.
And you get a feast for the eyes,
Now that's a good piece of broccoli.
sense for the soul,
We still have peaches.
I think I'm going to get some peaches.
and a feeling that even in the heart of Brooklyn, you can taste a bit of her ancestral homeland. This food writer and self-described home cook wants to show people the basics of Chinese and Asian cooking without all the fuss. It's the basis of her cookbook, To Asia with Love, and the reason we're sharing a seat at the table.
When we ate, my mum would call us to the table with the words sikfan.
Sikfan means?
Sikfans, eat rice.
Eat rice.
It's like that in many Asian cultures. The rice is the sacred ingredient on the table.
And at her mom's table, precision was key.
So you had to have a good command of your chopsticks, and we would eat every single rice kernel before we left the table.
So how am I doing?
You're doing okay. Dig in there. Dig in there, Michelle.
And dig in we did to a traditional Cantonese banquet based on her mother's recipes and McKinnon's vegetarian habit.
Some of these things are exactly how my mum would make. Like, this is actually my mum's recipe, the Mapo tofu. It's a vegan version. The original version has the ground pork. So my mum actually started helping me veganize or vegetarianize the dishes that she knew I loved. The potato and chive omelette is naturally vegetarian anyway. It was one of her quick meals growing up, and it's so comforting. Potatoes and eggs that run through a lot of cultures.
That's like scrambled eggs and hash browns.
Basically, right?
There is also a Japanese-inspired miso roasted eggplant, stir-fried potatoes with salt and vinegar, a nod to British chips, green beans dressed with fermented soybeans.
My youngest actually says, I want to stop, but I can't, when he eats those green beans.
Every mother's dream.
Exactly.
And another Asian staple, bok choy.
A dish I call restaurant greens. So, you know,
And it's beautiful, by the way.
Isn't it beautiful? And my mum taught me how to make it with, she puts a little bit of oil and sugar in the water that you blanch it, and it just keeps the greenness. So the vibrancy of the colour is really important. The other thing about these types of dishes, you know, a reflection of me growing up in two countries and kind of bringing together those two influences, you know, the third culture.
That third culture notion came after what McKinnon calls an identity crisis.
I was born in Sydney, Australia. I grew up being very much caught between the two cultures. You know, at home, my mum built this very Chinese household. We spoke Cantonese at home. We ate like this every night. We celebrated. She lit incense every morning at her altar to pay respects to her elders, and we celebrated all the customs. But as soon as I left the front door, I wanted to be Australian.
Did you feel that sense of shame almost?
Yeah. I didn't want people to ever hear me speaking Cantonese. I didn't even want to admit that I could speak a different language until I started cooking, which was really only 10 years ago. I really fell into a career in food. And it was like reclaiming, you know, who I am, reclaiming my culture. And so the recipes here that you see before you are like me saying, I'm really proud of who I am. And as a mother, that I can bring that to my children.
McKinnon's interest in food has taken her through family, community, and neighborhood, themes of her popular cookbooks and articles she's written over the last decade. It even led Hong Kong restaurant Vita to ask her to create a vegetarian menu.
They didn't want a traditional Chinese menu, but I got to do things like a soba noodle salad with my ginger scallion oil, which is what I call my mother sauce. It was an incredible experience going there and being asked to do that.
Validating, I would assume.
I felt like it was imposter syndrome when I was there because I was in a kitchen training proper chefs. I don't call myself a chef, I'm a home cook. I didn't go to cooking school or anything, but more importantly about that trip, wow, it was incredible to go back to the smells and the sounds that I remember from childhood.
Which drives her desire for those outside the culture to access it.
It resonated with so many people and people felt comforted by the stories. And to me, that's all I want out of all the food and all the stories that I create is for people to feel that comfort. Yeah, this is what I call an umami bomb. It's an umami bomb.
The kind of comfort that can only be created around a table by blending the old with the new.
There seems to be a bit of rebelliousness in some of these recipes.
Yes. The dumpling chapter, I was very proud of this, Michelle. It's dumplings by the season. So the idea behind it is you could go to the market, whatever vegetables are in season, and you could turn that into a dumpling.
Anything you want.
I was like, yeah, beetroot, that could go in a dumpling. Brussels sprouts, that could go in a dumpling. I do a lot of things like that which are not traditional. It is probably my way of rebelling against the tradition that my mum presented to me, so it's fun.
It's you.
Yeah, it's me.
And I just wanted to show you.
Oh, you're good.
Darn.
I was so impressed.
Here we go. There we are.
There we go.
Cheers.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. We'll see you next time for another helping of The Dish.
This episode of The Dish is sponsored by Prudential. Plan, invest, insure. Retire with Prudential.